Hi, welcome back to Modern Traditional Quilts. Today we are doing our Jelly Turnover Quilt. I've updated this pattern. It was first featured on Moda Bake Shop back in 2014. And as many of you follow Moda Bake Shop, you're probably aware that their archive is now been consolidated and the links are no longer good. And this particular quilt tutorial isn't quite as available as it used to be. But it's a fun one, and so I thought I would update it, redo this project for you, get it ready for my Etsy shop, and add some borders to it to make it a little bit bigger. So it's a beginner-friendly quilt project. It's a fast one because we're using pre-cut strips and pre-cut charm squares. Our finished quilt top measures 50 inches by 62 inches without the borders, and if you decide to add the borders with the pattern update, it will measure 70 inches by 82 inches, so a nice full-size quilt. So we're looking forward to this project today. With this pattern update, I've updated with some different color schemes. The original feature that appeared on Moda Bake Shop was done with Electric Quilt 7, and it had some very bright colors that were used in it, and it was kind of fun. Bringing it into 2025, I thought it'd be fun to do some different color schemes. A lot of people are into the black, white, and grays. So this middle pattern color scheme right here would look like if you chose just a regular black, white, and gray palette. And then this bar quilt over here, I think is probably similar to the one that originally ran on Bake Shop. Excuse me. It was done with the Grant Park Charm Square collection from Minnick & Simpson, and even though that one's not really available anymore, anything that's kind of a antique print, red, white, and blue would look good. So here's some charm squares that would look good in this quilt. This one is a new one out in 2025. It says Dainty Meadows by Heather Briggs. This one's a great one for Moda. If you wanted to make this quilt in just all blues, this denim and daisies would look really nice. It has a little bunch of wovens. It kind of has the antique fabric line, and so this one would be kind of nice if you wanted to do something kind of traditional. This You and Me by Gervais from Riley Blake Fabrics is also really super cute. And then if you were interested in that monochromatic color palette, the grays and whites, the Sable and Swan would look really great with this particular one. So you want to do one package of charm squares, one package of Bella Solids, a white, and then you want to get a packet of a jelly roll. It's just 2.5 inches pre-cut strips that are white, and then you also want to do those little 2-inch packets as well. They're really small in the same fabric pattern as these, and then it'll be really great, and then add your borders and so forth. Okay, so in the original Moda Bake Shop feature, we used Grant Park by Minnick & Simpson. Any Minnick & Simpson would also give you a nice antique feel. This is the cute little 2.5-inch squares that you need for the sashing. They call these candy squares. So let's create this project. You'll need one package of 5-inch charm squares. Here, this is Grant Park. Use 40 prints, one package of 5-inch Bella Solids. Quilt's going to use 40 of those. 3 packages of these 2.5-inch little tiny squares. These are going to make your sashing pieces. Your quilt's going to use 99 of these. 1 jelly roll of white, so these 2.5-inch pre-cut strips. And then 1 yard of navy blue fabric for the binding. If you would like to add an outside border, the inner border that I'm going to show you is 2.5 inches wide, and you're going to need about 1.5 yards, 1.75 yards of that one. And then if you want to do an outer border that's 8 inches wide, you're going to need about 2.5 yards of that fabric. So it's kind of fun, and we're going to work through this project together. All right, so to begin with, we are going to make some half square triangles. This is my favorite half square triangle technique. You're going to take a white fabric that you have from your Bella Solids packet, your 5-inch one, you're going to layer it on top of your print fabric. Before you layer it, you want to grab a pencil, grab maybe a right angle ruler, draw a pencil line down the center. Do you see where my 2 pins are in this diagram? You're going to sew on both sides of this. When you do that and kind of compensating for the serrated edge, you're going to end up with two 4.5-inch half square triangles, and that's our goal. So I'm going to start with this. I'm going to sew down, and I'm using white thread so you really can't see it very well. I've already sewn down the one side. Now I'm going to take my square, put it into my machine. Make sure you put your feed dog down. Just going to angle this a little bit so you can see it a little bit better. Here you go. Here's my machine. And we're going to sew down that side of the quilt of the triangle. I do backstitch. I know the quilt places probably say don't backstitch. My mom taught me how to sew clothing first, and you always backstitched everything. So it's a habit I have. I like to chain piece. I don't like to cut off my pieces, so I'm going to take my next one. I've actually sewn a whole batch of one side already, which is where you're seeing me cut. Here we've got our line. I've got one sewn side, and now we're going to sew 1/4 inch on the other side. So you're going to look like you have 3 lines on this. That's really important. Go ahead and chain piece all 40 of these. When you've done all 40 of them, we're going to cut them in half on that pencil line and make the half square triangle blocks for this quilt. Okay, so I've gone through and string pieced all of my half square triangles. If you look really, really closely, let's see if I can find a darker color, maybe it'll show up a little better on. You'll see that there is a sewn line, 1/4 inch. The center line is at my pencil, and then 1/4 inch away on the other side. So we've got 3 markings now on our whites. And what we're going to do is cut them apart so we can get our half square triangles. I use scissors for this. A lot of people use their rotary cutter and mat. I think I can follow my pencil line more readily with the scissors. So whatever method works best for you. You're going to go ahead and cut them apart on that drawn line. And you're going to see now that we have a 1/4 inch seam away from my cut line. We're going to go to the ironing board and we're going to press. So I usually go white side up, then flip it over to my print side, peel the print side back, if my fingers will grab it. Come on. And you're going to see that we now have all 80 half square triangles that we need for our quilt. Okay, so if you look, I've got my big pile of 80 half square triangles. Now I want to show you how I'm going to press them, okay? So what I'm going to do, just angle this camera a little bit. I'm going to put my white side on top, take my iron, press it down, and then I'm going to flip it over. Now I have my fabric side up, peel the fabric back, and I'm going to take my iron and just kind of roll that seam flat. That's going to give me a really nice half square triangle. Then when I'm done with that, I'm going to take my blocks and I'm going to square them. If you look, I've got these little dog ears. Some people say leave them on, some people say cut them off. I'm going to take a ruler like this, lay it on top with my cutting board, trim off those dog ears, and I'm going to square this block up to about 4.5 inches, okay? You'll notice that there's a serrated edge due to the pre-cut nature of the fabrics, because we're using those. That's pretty much what you're going to trim off to square these. Alright, so let's talk about our sashing technique. You're going to open up your jelly roll and select out 23 2.5 inch jelly roll strips. Now I use plain white because I wanted my half square triangles to really pop. You could be creative and choose a solid color. If you are just using regular yardage, you can cut that yardage into 2.5-inch strips. But what we're going to do is roll out those jelly rolls, and I stack them just like I show you on my cutting board in here, and we're going to cut those into 4.5-inch rectangle strips. Okay, we're going to get 8 sashing squares per, rectangles, 8 sashing rectangles per strip, and we're going to need 178 total. There's going to actually be 68, 6 left over if you cut out from 23. And then half of them we're going to reserve for the vertical columns, and then half of them we're going to make sashing and sew them with our pre-cut strip. So a quick tip, it's easy to cut several jelly roll strips at a time. You can lay 5 or 6 strips on your cutting board at a time and simply make the rotary cuts that you would just as 1 strip at a time. So I've gone ahead and done that. We've got it all laid out, and I like to hang my selvages over the edge first, cut those off, then come over and measure my 4.5 inches wide marking, and then go ahead and cut my rectangles. Here's our assembly diagram. It's important to understand that when we assemble this quilt, you're going to assemble it in 4 quadrants. I know quadrant's a funny word. It's probably a word I use because it was left over from teaching high school physics for too many years. But what we want to do is pick up one of our half square triangles. So I've got my half square triangle right here. And you want to make sure that we have the correct orientation on your diagram. So you look, if you're a traditional math, you'd call this quadrant 1, but I have this one over here labeled as quadrant 1. So quadrant 1, we're going to have all of our dark points going out. So I'm going to put it this way. We're going to sew all of our sashing strips to the right of that. Okay, and if you look, we go across 4 and then down 5. So I sew these in rows first and then do the vertical strip. So I go horizontal first and then vertical. So here I've got our layout. Here we go. We're going to put our sashing strip on top of it. Machines work better if they're turned on. And I like to just chain piece my top row. When I look at my patterns of colors, I don't particularly worry too much about which color I use next. I just want to make sure that if I use a red last, that I'm going to use a different color, maybe a burgundy or a teal or something, so a different color in the color scheme so that my blocks don't overmatch one another. Oops, that one is turned. There we go. And I'm going to go sew and make a row of 4. Okay, and when I have all of my rows sewn from one quadrant, I'm going to start going horizontally now with the sashing. So I'll pick up one of my rectangles and I'll put one of my pieces right sides facing with one another. And same thing, I'm going to make a set of 4 of them, go across, and then we're going to come back and add the outside round as a separate layer. You have all 4 quadrants done. You want to go back and add these outside borders as a sashing, the center border sashing, and then go ahead and add your outside border fabrics. If you want, you can do it in a whole bunch of different colorways. These are just some pictures to give you ideas. And here's a quilt as desired. I use an all-over lasso design for this one. This is a picture of what it looks like without the borders. This particular quilt was used for a Quilt of Valor recipient. And so I hope you can enjoy this project, and we'll see you another day. Have a good day. Bye-bye.